In the beginning, when the 9 realms were still young and the world tree Yggdrasil stretched across the cosmos like a spine of fate, the universe was not ruled by peace, but by tension. Fire clashed with ice, gods with giants, order with chaos. From this primordial struggle rose beings of immense power: Odin the Allfather, Thor the Thunderer, and Freyja the Enchantress. But among them, hidden in plain sight, was one who did not fit the mold of a warrior or king. He was not born to rule, nor destined to worship. He was born to disrupt. They called him Loki. A name whispered with both amusement and fear. A name that slithered through halls of gold and over desolate wastelands alike. Loki, son of a frost giant, blood brother to Odin, enemy to none, and yet threat to all. He was a shapeshifter who could walk as man, woman, beast, or flame. One moment, a clever friend; the next, a cruel deceiver. Wherever he went, the lines between good and evil blurred, bending under the weight of his riddles and charm. To speak of Loki is to step outside the safety of black and white, and into the gray mist where truth hides behind illusion. He is the trickster who delights in disorder, the flame that burns both the bridge and the builder. His laughter could mend a broken heart or start a war. But what drives such a being? Is he chaos incarnate, or simply misunderstood? A villain in the eyes of the gods, or a mirror to their flaws? To understand Loki is to understand the Norse cosmos itself, fractured, fated, and endlessly shifting. So let us begin. Not with a battle, but with a whisper. The whisper of chaos carried by the wind across the branches of Yggdrasil. The whisper of Loki.
Loki's story begins far from the shining halls of Asgard, deep in the primal world of Jotunheim, the land of the frost giants. There, among jagged mountains and glaciers older than memory, a storm struck not from the sky, but from lineage. From this union of opposites, flame and ice, rebellion and silence, Loki was born. His father, Farbauti, whose name means cruel striker, was a Jotun of violent storms, said to bring thunder not through might, but through destruction. His mother, Laufey, sometimes called Nal, was more enigmatic, slim as a needle, associated with the quiet burning of embers. In some tales she was a goddess, in others a mere mortal or elemental being. Little is known of her, but her subtle nature contrasted sharply with Farbauti's rage, suggesting that Loki, from his very conception, embodied contradiction. He was not born among gods. He was not raised in divine halls. He was a child of the periphery, of realms that gods feared and only fools tread. How? Some say it was through cunning, others through necessity. But most believe it was his charm, his ability to speak with the tongue of a poet and deceive with the grin of a friend, that allowed him to walk freely among the Aesir, the ruling gods of Norse mythology. He was not one of them by blood, but Odin, the Allfather himself, once made a blood pact with Loki, declaring him a brother. This sacred bond gave Loki a seat at the table of gods. And yet, he never quite belonged. He laughed too loudly at misfortune. He pushed boundaries others would never cross. He asked questions that made even Odin uncomfortable. Though he fought alongside the gods in many battles, though he offered brilliant solutions to impossible problems, Loki remained a being apart. 1 foot in Asgard, 1 foot in Jotunheim, and a mind always dancing somewhere in between. Some saw him as the embodiment of fire, not the comforting hearth, but the consuming blaze that turns forests to ash. Others saw him as a metaphor for change itself, slippery, sudden, and inevitable. Loki challenged order, upended plans, and exposed hypocrisy. He was the spark that forced the gods to evolve, even if they resented him for it. So where does a being like Loki truly come from? From fire, ice, rebellion, or from necessity? Perhaps. Loki's true origin was not in the clash of elements, but in the need for balance. For in a universe ruled by fate, even chaos has a purpose, And Loki, born of storm and ember, was that purpose made flesh. Loki was not like the other gods. He did not command thunder like Thor, nor rule wisdom like Odin. He was not a builder of kingdoms or a father of peace. Loki was a disturber of balance, a necessary disturbance in a world that claimed to cherish order, and yet he was not cast out. Not yet. Among the Aesir, Loki was an enigma, a shimmering thread in the divine tapestry that often threatened to unravel it. His presence in Asgard was both welcomed and feared, for while he was capable of brilliance, it often came at a price. Loki's words could charm a snake or curse a king. He was both the spark of salvation and the seed of catastrophe. His closest connection was with Odin himself. In a moment lost to myth, the two swore blood brotherhood, a sacred bond that even the gods dared not break. The All-Father, in his wisdom, saw something in Loki, perhaps a mirror of his own hunger for knowledge, or perhaps a shadow of the risks he was willing to take. Through this pact, Loki gained a place at the high table of Asgard, a voice among kings and gods, but with every word he tested the limits of that trust. With Thor, the thunder-wielding son of Odin, Loki shared a more complicated bond. They were companions in many adventures, though not always by choice. Loki's schemes often got them into trouble, but just as often it was his quick tongue and clever mind that got them out. He was the fire to Thor's storm, the laughter behind the lightning. When Thor awoke one day to find his mighty hammer, Mjölnir, stolen, it was Loki who flew to the realm of the giants disguised as a falcon. It was Loki who negotiated with the brutish Thrym, who demanded the goddess Freyja as a bride in exchange for the weapon. And it was Loki who convinced Thor to don a wedding dress and veil, tricking the giants into returning the hammer. The result? Thunder and vengeance rained down, but only because Loki played his part. Then there was Sif, Thor's golden-haired wife. One night, in a fit of mischief, Loki snuck into her chamber and cut off her radiant hair. It was a cruel joke, but again, Loki made it right. He ventured into the realm of the dwarves and commissioned a new crown of golden hair, spun from threads of magic and molten ore. And in doing so, he also secured treasures for the gods: Odin's mighty spear Gungnir, Freyja's ship Skidbladnir, and Thor's hammer Mjölnir itself. Yet not all of Loki's creations were gifts. He fathered monstrous children whose fates would shake the 9 realms. With the giantess Angerboda, he sired Fenrir, the massive wolf destined to slay Odin at Ragnarök. He fathered Jörmungandr, the world serpent who encircles Midgard, destined to battle Thor in the end times. And then there was Hel, his daughter, who rules over the realm of the dead, cold and half-rotten, with a gaze that sees through souls. These were not mere mistakes. They were symbols, manifestations of Loki's deeper truth. He was not just a bringer of chaos, he was the father of endings. The gods began to question, was Loki simply mischief in motion, or was he the herald of doom? And yet they kept him close. Why? Perhaps because they could not resist the brilliance of his mind, or because they feared what he might become if cast aside. Or perhaps they knew that in a world built on fate, even chaos has its place. In Loki's laughter echoed the truth the gods refused to speak: that their golden halls were built not just on power and glory, but on secrets and shadows. And Loki? He was both. If Loki was the flame that danced between gods and giants, then his children were the wildfires left in his wake, vast, uncontrollable, and destined to consume. From his union with the giantess Angerboda, a creature of shadow and wilderness who dwelled in the iron woods of Jotunheim, Loki became not just a trickster or a god of mischief, but a progenitor of apocalypse. Their offspring were not the golden children of Asgard, born to uphold order and protect the realms. No, Loki's children were born to defy, to dismantle, to destroy. First came Fenrir, the great wolf. Towering, ferocious, and growing at a rate that frightened even the gods, Fenrir was no ordinary beast. His eyes burned with prophecy. His jaws could crush bone and bend steel. As the creature grew, so too did whispers of his fate, foretold to slay Odin himself in the final battle of Ragnarök. At first, the gods tried to raise him among them, to tame the beast. Only Tyr, the god of war and justice, dared feed him. But as Fenrir grew, so did the fear. Eventually the gods tricked him into being bound with Gleipnir, a magical chain forged from the impossible. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the breath of a fish. When Fenrir realized the betrayal, he bit off Tyr's hand in rage. Bound and betrayed, the wolf howled into the void, a sound that would echo into the end times. Then came Jörmungandr, the world serpent. Cast into the seas of Midgard, he grew so vast that he encircled the entire world, biting his own tail in a cosmic Ouroboros. He was chaos given scale, lurking in the deep, unseen but ever present. Thor, Loki's uneasy companion, would one day face this beast in mortal combat, their fates intertwined. And though Jörmungandr was banished to the ocean's depths, the gods knew. He was only sleeping, waiting for the end. Last was Hel, their daughter, who was neither alive nor dead. Her flesh was fair on one side but blackened and decayed on the other. The gods, disturbed by her appearance and aura, cast her into the realm of the dead. There she took her throne and ruled over those who died not in battle, but in sickness, age, or misfortune. In her cold kingdom of Helheim, she became queen not through war but through inevitability. She welcomed the forgotten, the dishonored, the ordinary dead, those the gods had no place for. Together these three, Fenrir, Jörmungandr, and Hel, were not just children, they were omens, symbols of Loki's true nature, unpredictable, primal, and deeply tied to fate. Through them, the gods saw their own doom written in blood, and so fear turned to resentment. Loki, once a welcomed guest in the golden halls of Asgard, began to feel the cold edges of exile. The gods, who once laughed at his jokes and relied on his wit, now whispered behind his back. They questioned his loyalty. They watched him more closely. The warmth of kinship faded, replaced by suspicion. It was not a single act that severed Loki from the gods, but a culmination. A slow erosion of trust, a tightening of prophecy's grip. For in fathering monsters, Loki had done more than break taboo. He had birthed destiny, and in doing so, sealed his own. In the twilight days of peace among the gods, there was one figure who shone brighter than the rest, Baldur, the god of light, purity, and joy. He was the most beloved among the Aesir, a beacon of hope in a world often shadowed by war and prophecy. His presence brought laughter to Asgard, and even the harshest gods softened in his glow. But beneath the laughter of the gods, the Norns continued to weave their threads of fate, and Baldur's thread, it was said, was fragile. When Baldur began to dream of his death, all of Asgard trembled. Odin himself rode to the ends of the world and into the realm of Hel to uncover the truth. What he discovered chilled him. Baldur would die, and his death would signal the beginning of Ragnarök. In desperation, Frigg, Baldur's mother, went to every corner of the 9 realms and begged all things, fire, water, stone, metal, beasts, and diseases, not to harm her son. All swore the oath. Baldur, now seemingly invincible, became the object of a strange sport. The gods threw stones and spears at him, watching them bounce harmlessly away. They laughed. Even death, it seemed, could not touch Baldur. But Loki, watching from the shadows, did not laugh. He grew restless, jealous, suspicious of such perfection. And so, as only Loki could, he slipped into Frigg's confidence, disguising himself as an old woman. From her he learned the truth. There was one thing that had not taken the oath. Mistletoe. a small, seemingly harmless plant that Frigg had deemed too young and weak to matter. Loki saw his chance. Crafting a dart from the mistletoe, he returned to the gathering of gods. There stood Herder, Baldur's blind brother, who took no part in the games for obvious reasons. Loki approached him gently, offering to guide his hand in the spirit of inclusion. With Loki's whispered direction, Herder loosed the dart, and Baldur fell. Silence overtook the realm. The light was gone. The gods stood frozen as the impossible happened before their eyes. Baldur, beloved, radiant, eternal, lay lifeless upon the ground. A flower cut by unseen frost. The mourning was deep and endless. The world itself wept, the sky grew dim, and even nature recoiled. The gods tried to bargain with Hel for Baldur's return, but Loki, now unmasked, sabotaged the effort. He disguised himself again and refused to weep for Baldur, breaking the conditions for his release. And so Baldur remained in Hel's cold grasp. It was then that Loki's fate was sealed. The gods no longer saw a clever ally in their midst. They saw a murderer, a corrupter, a serpent in the garden. The blood brother of Odin was now the enemy of all Asgard. They hunted him down. Loki fled across the realms, shifting shape, hiding in mountain caves, even building a house with 4 doors to see in every direction. But the gods found him. They broke through his illusions and seized him, dragging him back in chains. As punishment, they enacted a sentence befitting the father of monsters. They took Loki's own sons, Vali and Nafi. Vali was transformed into a wolf, and in madness, tore his brother apart. The gods then used Nafi's entrails to bind Loki to a jagged rock deep beneath the earth. Above him they fastened a serpent, its fangs dripping venom onto his face. Loki's wife, Sigyn, stood by him, catching the venom in a bowl. But whenever she turned to empty it, a single drop would fall. Loki convulsed in agony, his screams echoing through the caverns, shaking the very foundations of the world. Some say these were the quakes we feel on the surface. There in the darkness, chained by grief, rage, and betrayal, Loki waited, but he did not forget. He did not forgive. And deep within his pain, something began to stir, a storm of vengeance that would one day break the world. Beneath the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil, bound in torment, Loki lay in waiting. Ages passed. Civilizations rose and crumbled, but through it all the venom dripped, and Loki remembered. He remembered the laughter that once welcomed him in Asgard's golden halls. He remembered the betrayal of the gods, the agony of chains, forged from his own son's entrails. He remembered Baldur's death, the moment when chaos was no longer a game but prophecy. And then, at the end of all things, the earth trembled, not from Loki's writhing, but from the cracking of fate itself. The signs of Ragnarök, the doom of the gods, unfolded like a poem long foretold. Fimbul winter, a great and merciless winter, swept across the realms. The sun and moon were devoured by wolves. The very fabric of the cosmos tore, and with it Loki's bonds. But this was not the trickster of old, the sly companion, the laughing shapeshifter. This was a being remade by pain and fury, a fire long starved of air. Loki emerged not as a god nor as a man, but as a force. He descended into the realm of the dead and took command of Naglfar, the ship of corpses, built from the untrimmed nails of the deceased. Its timbers groaned with the weight of the forgotten. Its sails, stitched with shadows, caught the wind of destiny. At Loki's command, Naglfar surged across the storm-tossed seas, carrying with it an army of chaos, frost giants from Jotunheim, undead legions from Hel, and beasts born of ancient vengeance. At the helm stood Loki, his eyes twin embers of resentment and resolve. Before them rose Asgard, shining still, but trembling. The rainbow bridge Bifrost shattered under the weight of the advancing army. And there at the breach stood Heimdall, guardian of the gods, ever watchful, ever ready. Heimdall had seen Loki's betrayal, Now he saw Loki's wrath. Their battle was one of mythic fury, blade against blast, light against flame. Neither held back, neither showed mercy. And in the end both fell dying as mirror images, two keepers of order, two heralds of fate, locked in death. Yet even as Loki's blood soaked the battlefield, his legacy marched on. His monstrous children fulfilled their destinies. Fenrir, the giant wolf, broke free of his bonds and leapt upon Odin, swallowing the All-Father whole. Jörmungandr, the world serpent, rose from the oceans and clashed with Thor. Though the thunder god struck him down, he took only 9 steps before succumbing to the serpent's venom. Hel watched silently from her cold throne, the goddess of death reigning over the souls of the fallen. The world burned, the heavens cracked, the gods fell one by one, and in the ashes, silence, but even this end was not the end. From the destruction, new life stirred, a rebirth long whispered in prophecy. A world remade, where the sons of gods would walk the earth, and Baldur, once slain by Loki's scheme, would return from Hel's domain, shining once more. And what of Loki? Was he annihilated in battle, his flame extinguished at last, or was he transformed, reabsorbed into the great wheel of cosmic change? For Loki was never merely a destroyer. He was the spark in the dark, the crack in the mirror, the agent of becoming. He was chaos, but also creation, the end, and the seed of the beginning. And so, as the new sun rises over a cleansed earth, we must ask, did Loki truly fall, or did he in truth fulfill the role that only he could, the necessary madness before rebirth? Though the world of frost giants and golden halls has faded into the mist of forgotten ages, Loki endures, not merely as myth, but as metaphor, mirror, and muse. From the oral traditions of Viking skalds to modern streaming platforms, Loki has transcended time. He is no longer just a Norse deity of chaos. He is a cultural phenomenon, reborn across centuries, reshaped for every era that dares to question the rules. In the pages of comic books, Loki becomes a charming, silver-tongued schemer, sometimes antagonist, sometimes anti-hero, often both at once. Marvel Comics introduced Loki in 1949, but it was the 21st century that saw him ascend to global recognition. In blockbuster films, his image, brought to life with elegance and menace, captivated millions. Yet it was not simply his power that drew audiences, but his depth. Here was a character who was vulnerable yet dangerous, jealous yet lovable. A villain who questioned his own villainy. A god who rebelled, not just for destruction, but for identity. Fans saw in Loki not just a foe to be vanquished, but a voice for the outsider, the one who never quite belonged. Even our language carries his legacy. The words loco, lunatic, luck, all hint at the unpredictable, the erratic, the strange turn of fate. These are the domains Loki ruled: chaos and change, trickery and truth. In every twist of fortune, in every shift of fate, Loki's spirit flickers. He is the whisper behind the unexpected success, the smirk beneath a clever deception, the shadow in the mirror, reminding us that things are not always what they seem. In literature and psychology, Loki has found a home in the archetype of the trickster, a figure that challenges authority, breaks taboos, and reshapes the world. Like Prometheus stealing fire or Coyote in Native American folklore, Loki is the agent of disruption, not because he is evil, but because change itself is necessary even when painful. In modern storytelling, Loki is not always condemned. He is explored, analyzed, even empathized with. Audiences today are drawn to complexity, and Loki provides it in abundance. He speaks for the misfit, the rebel, the shapeshifter, those who blur the lines between right and wrong, chaos and order, mask and truth. More than a god, Loki is a mirror. He reflects the contradictions in all of us, our desire to belong and our impulse to break free, our love for order and our secret thirst for upheaval. Loki shows us that being human is not about choosing one path, but navigating the tension between many. And in this modern world of constant transformation, technological, cultural, political, Loki feels more relevant than ever. He reminds us that nothing stays the same, and that sometimes, to grow, we must first fall apart. Is Loki a villain, a hero, a force of chaos, or a necessary agent of change? Perhaps he is all these things, and none of them. Like the shifting winds of fate, Loki cannot be defined, only experienced. In every myth, in every era, Loki reminds us of a simple truth, that even the gods must dance with disorder, and sometimes the trickster wins. From the halls of Asgard to the silver screens of Hollywood, from the whispered sagas of the Norse to the memes of the digital age, Loki has never truly vanished. He lives in our stories, in our symbols, in our struggles. He lives in the moment a rule is questioned, in the smirk before the storm, in the courage it takes to be different. For Loki is not just the god of mischief, he is the god of transformation. And transformation, as we now know, is not the end of the world. It's the beginning of something new.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.